Has the news got you unsettled and worried? Feeling uncomfortable with the absolute state of things? Well, one way to help that unnerving feeling of discomfort is by heading over to British-Boxers.com, where they do knockout undies and nightwear, and you'll be as snug as a bug in some very nice pants as you swear in despair at the television. Not only do British Boxers have luxurious two-fold cotton on all of their clothes, but they're also a lovely ethical bunch who respect workers' rights, manufacture all their stuff with minimal waste, and, actually they're almost too nice a bunch. It's ridiculous. Hasn't anyone dug up any dirt on them? Have they ever returned a library book back late or something? Wow, no, not even... Oh my goodness. Well, if you grab great garms from BritishBoxers.com, then use the code PARPOLBRO15 at the checkout and you'll get a swanky 15% off whatever you buy, which will hopefully make you feel less sad that you're just not as good as them. Sorry, I'm just projecting now. British-Boxers.com. They must have once done swears at someone's pocket. No, not even that. Bonkers. Hello and welcome to the Partly Political Broadcast, the comedy politics podcast that has been a proud member of the Anti-Growth Coalition since episode 1, where it's continued to gain no listeners at all. I'm Tina Duyeb, and this week, as the Prime Minister and lobotomised Helga from Hey Arnold, Liz Truss, plans to launch a charm offensive to appeal to her own Conservative MPs, many have mocked her as she has all the warmth of a fart lingering in a crypt. But look, listen, to woo a bunch of personality-free, cold-blooded Scrooges, you have to be one as well, and any actual signs of warmth would just make them nervous they were talking to someone who'd had to use skills to get through life. It is an unfortunate and very concerning state of affairs when the week's politics news begins with someone making as careless and as tasteless a comment as Scottish First Minister and retired EDF mascot Zingy the Flame, Nicola Sturgeon, who said during a live BBC interview that she detests the Tories. Wow. That is certainly not something I'd say on this podcast, and not just because I'm nowhere near as verbose, so I wouldn't have used detest. I'd have gone for I fucking hate the Tories, and possibly then throwing in and I wish they'd all get in the shit-filled sea they're responsible for. I wouldn't say it, because as Minister for Equalities who works hard to make sure his ethics are as bald as his stupid head, Nadim Zawahi, said, it is divisive language. Yes, it is. In the same way that vampires might say you keeping extra garlic at home to stop them from eating your neck is divisive, or mosquitoes might say that repellent means that they can't give you dengue fever, and that is divisive. It does just create unnecessary animosity about the enemy of the people. Government. Of course, Nadim Zawahi would never say such divisive things, and when, for example, in 2019, he suggested the then leader of the Labour Party and Scourer sponge, Jeremy Corbyn, might shoot rich people, I guess that he was just trying to show what great policies the opposition had, and looking back, actually, I think it definitely would have gained them more votes if they'd just put that in the manifesto. Whereas now, if, like Nicola Sturgeon, you say you detest the Tories, it is tantamount to punching down, isn't it? It's just jumping on that bandwagon. Oh, sure, it's easy for you to say you think they're the worst bunch to ever be in charge of anything, including that time a dog stole a tractor, now that everyone thinks that. You're basically punching down, pal. With many of the polls showing the Conservatives are 30 points below Labour, they're looking set to become almost extinct at any minute. And then who's laughing? Well, apart from all of us, everyone. While also being very curious that if they did become a minority, would that now mean the Tories would have to work out how to wage a campaign of hate against themselves? It's not like Liz Truss, who can only unify people with every word she says, which, based on her speech at the end of the Conservative conference last week, are just pie and growth, usually said together like she's part of a secret cabal of sourdough enthusiasts, which I suppose might explain to her appealing to the public like a jar of frothing yeast does. That speech that she made highlighted the threats the country faces from what Liz Truss calls the Anti-Growth Coalition. Yes, those bastards, who I presume are responsible for me still only being 5'5". Who are these people who are working together to stop growth? Well, luckily, the Prime Minister has a list. This anti-growth coalition is made up of Labour, OVS, the Lib Dems, OVS, the SNP, even though they're all about independence and not coalitions at all, the militant unions, the vested interests dressed up as think tanks, which, hang on, are they vests or tanks? That's weird. Why would you buy one that's dressed up as another? Maybe it's good in the winter. Then there's the Talking Heads, the Modern Lovers, all of David Byrne's other musical projects, Brian Eno, the Ramones, Roxy Music, and I think that list goes on. The Brexit Deniers, the Brexit Fishnets, the Brexit Opaques, and Brexit Compassion and Support, Extinction Rebellion, Your Neighbour 3 Doors Down, the Dry Cleaners, that guy who's always outside Sainsbury's playing on the traffic cone, 4 of the presenters of The One Show, Basil Brush, and some chinchillas. I mean, basically, it's everyone, and I'm starting to feel left out. Although maybe I am part of it. I've definitely used cream to stop a verruca, so that makes me anti-growth, right? Celebrity chef and owner of a face most like the rear end of a pet, Jamie Oliver, might also be part of the Anti-Growth League, but the government say they're yet to confirm. Possibly because he insists he's anti-obesity, but then he also waves desserts around, so it's very confusing, isn't it? Thing is, this lot, who aren't in power whatsoever and haven't been for 12 years, have all been using all the power they don't have to be against all the growth, and it's just not on, right? I mean, without them not being in charge or having any policies, the Conservatives would have grown everything by now. We'd basically be living on a beanstalk that had a giant living on the top of it. But, as Liz Truss said, this lot, and maybe Jamie Oliver, who knows, have been getting taxis from North London townhouses, even if they live elsewhere in the country, and going to BBC studios, which are now largely in Manchester, so that is quite a cost on Uber, actually. Are you sure they're not creating growth by fueling the transport industry, Liz? No? Sorry, okay. And what they're doing when they get to these BBC studios from their North London townhouses is they're dismissing anyone challenging the status quo from broadcast to podcast. Oh shit, it is me. Oh great, do I get a badge? And they're all, as in the majority of the country except the Conservatives that Liz has kindly united together, they're all against the growth the Tories are doing, which I think, looking at it, is of inflation, national and personal debt, poverty, rich people's offshore bank accounts, and people who say out loud, you can't grow a pie, you fucking idiot. What's weird about this anti-growth coalition is it just keeps growing as well. I mean, there were people from it at the Conservative conference, for Christ's sake. No, I don't mean the 2 women from Greenpeace who brilliantly interrupted Liz Truss's speech with a banner saying, who voted for this, thereby doing proper work in tackling toxic emissions by briefly stopping the Prime Minister from talking. No, I don't mean them, because obviously they're part of the anti-growth movement. I mean, they're actively against the growth of pollution and climate change, which is so unhelpful to the Conservative plans for growth and plans and pies. I mean, Liz Truss said they're going to deliver on their plans for net zero by opening more gas fields in the North Sea, because nothing is going to cause a stop in emissions quite like killing off all of humanity as quickly as possible. No, the secret members of the anti-growth coalition at the conference were, get this, right, all the Tory MPs there who also think Liz Truss is the worst thing to happen to the planet since whenever Kanye West last tweeted. Former Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, a man who increasingly looks like he's had prosthetics to play a nearly dead version of himself, he revealed that he had recorded 237 conversations with colleagues at the conference on their doubts about Liz Truss. And what that really shows you is that you should never ever talk to Grant Shapps as the fucking creep is recording it, fucking creep. All the old guard have come out against the current lot, from former Home Secretary and the only person who starts their kids' bedtime stories by insisting they're sitting uncomfortably, Priti Patel, who said the government must stop going for populist measures. I mean, wow, but yeah, I guess Patel's just defending her own brand and won't let anyone else have it. Then former Culture Secretary and woman that boxes of frogs uses an analogy for bonkers, Nadine Dorries, said this government's actions will cause children to starve. You know, because up until the second Liz Truss became leader, kids across the UK were eating brilliantly, and that Marcus Rashford was just a feeder who didn't want children to be healthy enough to take his job. That's what it must have been. And then Michael Gove, with his face like he forgot to wear a hazmat suit and he checked on the reactor, he's been complaining so much that Liz Truss's allies told the press he was a sadist, which the PM spokesperson then had to deny in Parliament. Good. I mean, he's not a sadist, is he? He's a spineless sadist, and it's important that we use the correct terms, otherwise how will we distinguish him from all the other sadists in the Tory party? Like, for example, Home Secretary and Nazi Squidward, Suella Braverman, who is in a totally different league of tyrannical sadism. She said that her dream is to see a flight take asylum seekers to Rwanda by Christmas. Now, I'm not big on dream interpretation, but having looked it up, you know, what all the symbols mean, what all the things that you think of mean, if that is what your nighttime subconscious is playing to you, then you can expect that in life you face the risk of being dragged back to hell at any point soon. Imagine that being your dream, your life goal. It's depressing enough she's the Home Secretary, but thank fuck she isn't a sick kid, or the Make-A-Wish Foundation would have a really awkward day ahead of them. Suella Braverman has expressed so many grim views in the past week, it's like someone put the Daily Mail comments section on sprinkler mode. She wished the government had kept the cut to the 45p tax rate and accused those who were against it of staging a coup, which isn't true, as they all hate the arts. If it was a coup, I reckon they did it without any thought for blocking whatsoever. Braverman wants to ban international students from bringing over their loved ones with them, which does make sense, as how will they learn about British culture if they don't have a constant longing for something they need that's now only available in other countries? The Home Secretary said she wants Britain to train up its own fruit pickers rather than get people from abroad to do it. And yes, we are the best at cherry picking from a bunch of poor options. And Braverman would like to categorise cannabis as a Class A, as it's a gateway drug. And that is true. It can lead to you being more relaxed and calmer about other stuff as well. And then how will you have unnecessary panics about pointless culture wars? She said this just as over in the US, American president and man whose eyes are trying to emulate the Homer Hedge meme, Joe Biden, he's pardoning thousands of people who were convicted for possession of marijuana. But I suppose we don't just want to copy the US, as otherwise our special relationship will become like one of Friends again, which isn't very interesting, rather than two people who have to hang out occasionally because of circumstance and spend the whole time wishing the other was dead. Number 10 say there are no plans to make cannabis a Class A drug, and the opposition have been super quick to tackle Suella Braverman's comments about her dream of deporting people to Rwanda by Christmas. Yes, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who styles herself entirely on Angelica Houston in The Witches, she went full effective opposition mode by slamming the Home Secretary for her horrendous comments and saying it wasn't good enough, saying it was a terrible thing to say, and the government are not deporting people fast enough. Yeah, you tell them, Reeves. By Christmas, what are you on? A real caring Labour government for the people would send those desperately seeking safe asylum to a country known for human rights abuses by next week, you bloody slackers. Oh, finally, a proper alternative political force for the country. Phew. I think we'll be okay, everyone, as this lot are at least 30 points ahead, so we'll be condemning people to death in no time, probably for once reading about cannabis in a book. The other member of Liz Truss's cabinet that's been in the headlines this week is now former Minister for Trade Policy, Conor Burns, who has the appearance of a sunburnt bow bun. He was sacked from the front bench and had the whip removed for allegations of inappropriate behaviour at the Conservative conference. What could be considered inappropriate amongst a load of Tories? Did he accidentally say refugees are people too, or tip a member of staff generously? It's actually suggested that he put his hand on a young man's knee without consent, which I would have thought would be standard Conservative fare. I mean, that's basically a qualifying factor to have joined the last Prime Minister's cabinet. Tories love doing stuff without your consent, like electing a new leader or letting companies pour shit into the sea or fracking in your garden. Still, Conor Burns has now been replaced by what if James Buckley was in a car accident, Greg Hands, who is the only other Conservative allowed to do the job of Minister for Trade Policy, and that's why he's done it 3 times since 2016. But I suppose he is very good at swapping in for someone else that's fucked up. So now Liz Truss is all about making the Conservatives leave the anti-growth coalition and rejoin her actually anti-growth party by pushing some real anti-growth their way to show them who does it properly. The Chancellor and Goggles the Muppet cosplayer, Kwasi Kwarteng, has pushed forward his fiscal plan announcements to October 31st, as that's the best day for those horrors to be unleashed, and it'll no doubt be full of tricks and very few treats, unless you're someone who's already bet again on shorting the pound as it descends into the underworld. It will mean, though, you can prepare some appropriate Halloween costumes. Perhaps you could think about going as a U-turn, the Ghost of the Pound, Mr. Jekyll, because he's no longer a doctor thanks to the underfunding of the NHS that's left him stressed and unwell, or maybe any character from a slasher movie, as they'll definitely be expecting more cuts. Despite calls to, it doesn't look like the government will raise benefits in line with inflation, because I presume that would cause growth of the economy and children as they eat, and this anti-growth lot would only get sad on a podcast and ruin it. And it's not time for divisive chat like that now, is it? This is the time to unify people, and that's why Liz Truss has got to work hard to persuade not just her MPs, but the country, that we need to be united. And I reckon she will too. Just, united against her as one big anti-growth coalition, desperately trying to make sure she doesn't flourish as Prime Minister for another day longer. And let's never let Jamie Oliver join us either, or he'll just ruin it by waving around a trifle instead of eating it. In other news, Liz Truss travelled to Prague last week to meet with over 40 leaders of other European countries to find out how many people on the continent think she's a dickhead, as well as here. Sorry, I mean to discuss Ukraine, but it totally wasn't like being in the EU at all. It was very, very different. It was the European political community beyond the EU, you see, and that's different as there's no way we'd get suckered into forming part of an EU army like in the EU, and instead they just discussed using all their might altogether to take part in the war in Ukraine, which is very different. While everyone else there was discussing the war-torn nation, Liz Truss never let those who are truly suffering fall from her agenda, and she had to spend time pleading with Europe for help so we don't have a load of blackouts in the winter. Yes, since Brexit we do indeed hold all the cards, it's just that now energy costs so much we've had to use them to top up for October and we'll be really fucked come January. Criminal barristers in England and Wales have ended their strike, accepting the offer of a 15% pay rise from the government, even though it's less than the 25% asked for. But I suppose if I was a lawyer having to deal with the Justice Secretary and what if Silvio from The Sopranos fucked a hedgehog, Brandon Lewis, I'd also do whatever I could just to reduce his sentences. And Liverpool has been selected to host the 2023 Eurovision Song Contest on Ukraine's behalf, which is great news for the city. And I reckon it'll be a UK winning year too, but only because the Home Secretary will ban all the other contenders from entering the country. Hello. You might be able to hear that I'm a super croaky boy this week. Yeah, that's right. I'm all jazzy. I got my jazz voice. My agent, daughter, kindly brought back a nasty cold from school this week that she suffered from for all of, I think, 5 minutes. And I and my wife have been ruined by since last Wednesday. I swear that if there was a mathematical equation for my idea of hell, it's 2 ill parents plus 1 very active and totally not ill 4.5-year-old stuck in a flat equals. It is that time of the year, though, isn't it? I've not got the COVID, thankfully, so I guess I got one of the other new ones. If it was going around the school, I suppose it's nice to know I'm on trend for once. And I've also been doing my bit for the economy by supporting the manufacturing of Lemsip and helping growth of phlegm, but it's growth nonetheless. Are you in the anti-growth coalition? Do let me know. I mean, perhaps we should have local meetings or something, though I suppose it would go against the whole point of it if more and more people came along each time. I was so chuffed when Liz Truss mentioned the tyranny of podcasts, and I really hope that when her government is brought down somewhere between the next 5 minutes and 2024, that this podcast was at least in a very minute bit responsible. You know, maybe we were a slight kick to the shins. That's all I want. I'd be really proud of that. I've got absolutely nothing exciting to say this week because I've just been ill and complaining about it. One of the highlights, though, has been my agent having a meltdown when she found out there were only guide dogs and not guide cats, to the point where she screamed and wailed and then sulked under her duvet for ages. It's always interesting. There's always that site on Twitter there, Didn't Happen of the Year Awards, where the fuck it is, always like have a go at people saying their kids said shit. Is that they genuinely get upset about these sorts of things. That is a 100% real thing my daughter got upset about. Now, it's times like that I do worry on this show I'm not dealing with the real issues that will affect her future, but instead silly things like climate change or the collapse of society. Maybe I should do an episode on why cats have been blocked from partaking in supportive roles. Who am I kidding? It's because they'd lead their owners to lie under a car or wherever there was sunlight. It would be terrible chaos, though still arguably less dangerous for people with disabilities than the DWP. There we go. He brought it back. Otherwise, thank you for listening to the show still, even though it's a croaky week. Thanks to the Ko-fi and Patreon donations and all of that. And if you have any ideas about what I should be doing on episode 300 of this show, which is now only 13 weeks away, please drop me a line. Otherwise, like all birthdays, I'll just pretend it isn't happening and forget to release an episode at all, as I'll just be hiding and eating cake. Right, on this week's show, I'm chatting to Mic Wright about all of the shit, so, get on that, why don't you? Come on. With just the SNP one to go, conference season is pretty much done for 2022, which is bad news for pairs and great news for the rest of us, as no longer will we have to hear long-winded speeches that are sparse in detail, yet convey heavily what the years ahead will be like. I've often wondered if political conferences are like fashion shows, whereby someone will walk down a catwalk dressed as a giant clamshell with a shoe on their head and their face painted in custard, and then a year later an item will pop up in H&M that's yellow with shells on it and a hat will have a decorative shoelace. Party conferences see MPs spout how desperate they are to incarcerate anyone that speaks out of turn, how great it'd be to have more war, or that they'd actually like to save the planet, and what that means is that in 6 months' time there'll be a motion to arrest anyone found drawing a moustache on a poster in a train station, a commemorative coin to remember Dad's army, and a call to make rubber ducks on 95% plastic only. Was this year any different? Was hearing Liz Truss garble on about pies again and Keir Starmer saying it's a Labour moment, showing that the next year of politics will be crusty and full of pregnant pauses? Or more that it will continue to be led by vapid, useless twats who talk a lot of empty bullshit with fascist overtones, and also undertones and middle tones? Is it the speeches we look at, though, or the words written about them by hacks? How many people were asleep in the audience? And the general response to the nation, or, well, lack of one. Well, this week I asked brilliant writer and dismantler of the news, Mic Wright, if he could give an overview of just where we are now. As well as engaging in regular forensic dissection of the output of political journalists, Mick manages to do it with an excellent sense of humour, and so I thought who better than him to explain which degree of screwed we still all are, and what, if any, indicators the tedium of conference season gave us. I've been meaning to get Mick on the podcast for ages, but I kept forgetting because I'm stupid. So it was really good to finally have a chat. I should say that when we spoke, I was so full of a head and chest cold, and I was several lemsips deep. So I'm not entirely sure my questions make sense. I'm pretty sure at one point I just repeat back what Mick said to me as though I've just thought of it, and it was a question, which is, I mean, that is terrible interview skills. You can look forward to that bit. However, he gave fantastic answers despite all that, so please ignore my snotty paracetamol interruptions. I had to edit out so many coughs. Look, I hope you enjoy. Here is the brilliant Mic Wright. Hi, Mick. It's brilliant to have you on the show this week. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks for having me.
It's a joy. And, the conference season is over. I thought it would be a good point to ask you firstly, did you enjoy it? How was conference season for you? And how do you feel the British political landscape is looking like now? Normally, it's quite a good indicator once all the conferences are finished, to kind of see where things are. Do you think that's the case now?
Did I enjoy it? Well,
I asked that on purpose. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know. I experienced conference season from my bunker in Norfolk. I've been to Labour conference once in the past when I was a journalist, a more mainstream journalist, but since then not. Did I enjoy it? No, not at all. I think what's interesting is, from my perspective, as someone who spends most of their time trying to look at how the media is covering these events, so I'm sort of like, examining it through another level of gauze almost. It's like, well, what are they looking at? Like, it's what I'm seeing with my eyes and hearing with my ears. Does it have any bearing on what the media is reporting on these conferences? And fundamentally, I think what I get from it most times, and this time especially, is the way that we kind of focus on the tone and presentational stuff rather than actually, the content of what's been being said. So with the Labour conference, it was a lot about saying, oh, look, they're ready for government. And with the Tories, it's, look, they're fighting with each other. But actually, how much difference is there in terms of what they're saying they want to do to the country? So, you have Suella Braverman saying that it's her dream to have a front page from the Telegraph showing people being sent to Rwanda. And then you have Rachel Reeves saying the problem with this is they're not deporting enough people. And so you sort of go, well, actually, what are we going to get if we get a Labour government? Are we just going to get the same cruelty but more efficient? That's what I see from this. And I also see a shift in capital. So, a reporting saying, oh, it's fantastic that Labour has got way more business interest in its conference and a lot more money from business coming in. That's a worry to me, because it simply says to me, look, British capital can see that Labour are going to be the next government. So time to pour a load of money into them to make sure their interests are, protected and reflected in the policies of the next Labour government.
I've only been to one party conference ever, which was Labour in 2017, and I've got this distinct memory of meeting a guy in a queue to, I can't remember what event it was, and he must have been in sort of 50s, 60s, and he was saying to me, this is so wonderful, I've never seen so many young people here. Normally it's just business stands for BAE and these awful people, and it's so dry and boring, and it's so vibrant and full of young people. It's the best thing I've ever been to. And I always think of him as I look at conferences like this year going, oh mate, you must be so sad again.
Yeah, and there's a quote from an official Labour source quoting it, quoted in the Guardian saying, "Yeah, it's fantastic. All the tossers in t-shirts are gone." And what they're basically saying is, it's great, democracy. No, we've clamped down on democracy in the party. Don't worry, the people who believe in things, they're gone. But us, the pragmatic friends of business, are here. So, like you say, BAE, you've nothing to worry about as long as you put a Union Jack on the drones. Fantastic.
Yeah. It's really bleak. And I mean,
I haven't done many jokes. There's not been a lot of jokes so far.
No, it doesn't. No, you don't need to. I should say you don't need to do jokes in this bit. This is, is the way in which it sort of seemed, I suppose, press-wise, or even just sort of watching from a distance, is the Conservatives, as you say, seem like a total and utter mess, and Labour seem to be having a Labour moment. But I mean, is it really that way? I mean, I think we could probably correct in saying that the Conservatives are a total mess. That bit seems absolutely right.
The Conservatives are an abject mess, but it's worth saying, that have we forgotten 1992, where everyone assumed that the Tory party were definitely going. There was no way that they could win the election again. Labour soaring ahead in the polls, and then they lost. The thing with Labour, I think, is that Starmer's whole attitude to this is we just need to not to make any mistakes and we will win. And that I don't see a party that's offering saying we have a different vision. When you hear Rachel Reeves saying the problem is they're just not deporting enough people, to me it's just about a change of colour, of a change of of branding on the government, but saying, oh, we'll do the same things, we'll just be much more efficient. Don't worry, we will we'll be as cruel but more efficiently cruel. And we saw that. The other worry that I have is all these people getting very excited about the prospect of a huge majority Labour government seem to forget what happened in that first Blair administration, which was business had flooded back to the Labour Party before that 97 election, and we had a series of scandals about patronage in in the following years. The Hinduja brothers getting their passports sorted out by Peter Mandelson, the Bernie Ecclestone F1 stuff. Right now, what we need is, if we're pretty certain that Labour will be the next government, we don't need, as is happening now, a good swathe of the press going and saying, not really looking carefully at what Starmer is doing and what the Starmer's Labour Party are doing. There should be more scrutiny on them if they are going to be the next government than going, oh, fantastic, they'll probably have a huge majority.
I mean, one of the things you're so brilliant at is absolutely going through all the press coverage, as you mentioned, and really scrutinising it. It was interesting how we just got the headlines about Labour. They're going to have a big new green energy company that's going to be publicly owned, and it was only when you look into it, like the small print, like the little bit they do on a mortgage advert or something, it was like, oh no, it won't be a supplier, it'll just be an investment company, and it'll work with the other big energy companies. And you go, oh, that actually sounds really like it isn't what we need.
Yeah, it's basically an investment bank. It'll de-risk some investments for private companies, basically. But it was framed in the press as a nationalized energy company. Like you say, That's a problem. That's a huge problem. Like, okay, there may be, there's probably people who can make arguments for why that's a good idea. I don't think it is, but there are probably arguments you can make for that. But we have the same issue with, Jacob Rees-Mogg announcing that there'll be that they're going to have a fusion power plant, prototype fusion power plant ready by 2025. But when you get into, putting energy into the grid, but when you look into it, you go, actually, the science on this is not sort of fixed yet. We're not really certain that's going to happen, but it's just reported in local and national media as, oh, there'll be a fusion power plant by 2025. And you go, well, this is a huge issue. You're telling people this as if it's actually going to happen. Of course, there are loads of good science reporters who tell you otherwise, but they're not the ones writing the political stories, and these things don't connect up.
But I mean, that's been the case for a very long time now, hasn't it? In that the people who are the experts in this are never the ones that get to have a voice on it. We've just had a thing in the news today that I've just been catching up on, but about the whole big £15 million pound initiative to help people reduce their energy costs that Liz Truss has decided not to go along with because it might actually be helpful and it's not that expensive. And again, there's no sort of expert knowledge that's coming into any of this, and there's no expert knowledge that's being kind of checked on any of this. It's sort of right back to, I suppose, what Michael Gove said years ago, isn't it? That we just seem to ignore all the people that genuinely know what to do.
Yeah, we've had enough of experts, except Michael Gove now doing another one of his. He is so like I too often I use professional wrestling as a metaphor for British politics and the media, but like Michael Gove is currently engaged in another one of his face turns where now he's now sort of creating himself into this hero, says, oh, the government shouldn't be doing this, it's very bad, you know, and you think, oh, and Simon Jenkins in The Guardian yesterday saying, oh yeah, what the Tories really need to do is replace Liz Truss with a unifying figure like Michael Gove. You think, this man sniffing glue? It's incredible. It's incredible. You know, we seem to have a professional media class whose memories last about 2 months. That's as far as they can remember back, which is incredible.
I mean, but isn't that what the government are hoping? Well, I mean, this is another question really, and that, you know, I'm constantly baffled as to whether or not the government are unbelievably stupid, or all of this is carefully planned so that they get sort of self-benefit from it, or is it possible that it's somehow sort of both things? But I do wonder, part of it is just this assumption that the general public have a memory that lasts all of 5 minutes, especially because the press seems to go along with that. But even the fact that, you know, with all the bailing bankers out once again, it's like, does no one remember 12 years ago, 14 years ago? Have we all just forgotten it? You know, it's quite amazing that there's just this assumption that no one has a memory that lasts very long.
I think the government is a little bit like Wile E. Coyote, where he's trying to lay the road in front of him so he doesn't fall into the canyon. Like, they're not. I don't think it's. I think there's this big mistake where people do sort of assume that there are these great Machiavellian plans and schemes going on. I think a lot of times they are just panicking and trying to come up with something to do next. Obviously, there are some things where you look at it and go, well, that is highly dubious, like, you know, the crashing of the pound and, you know, the currency speculators doing very well out of that, and those currency speculators also being massive donors to the Tories. You know, it doesn't require a murder board on the wall, you know, pinning the bits of string together to say, okay, well, there's something there. But a lot of times, like, it's like this stuff with Liz Truss wearing that dress for her conference speech, and you know, it being brought up by Russell T Davies. Oh, look, this is quite like the dress that Emma Thompson wore in Years and Years. Well, yeah, but Liz Truss has been wearing dresses like that before Years and Years was ever filmed. So it's more like, well done to the wardrobe department on Years and Years for doing, you know, good research and picking a dress that a senior female Tory politician might wear, you know. So I think we've got a bit too much kind of Queen's brooch analysis type thinking from some people when it comes to government, because I don't think that I think that they're sort of stupid in particular ways, clever in particular ways, and cruel in a pretty coherent way.
Yeah, it always strikes me sort of a lot of it is simple sort of arrogance and knowing that they've got the power to push things through, rather than as you say, a sort of clever plan that they've actually thought about. Yeah,
if it was a clever plan, they would not be so quick to turn to U-turn on it. For instance, like if it was a clever plan, they'd stick to it. If it was a clever plan, it might work, you know. But of course, the Tory party has shown itself forever to be incredibly resilient and capable of rebranding and reshaping itself. It's, you know, it's why. It's why Labour only had 14 years out of the past 43 in government. So, you know.
And is that, you mentioned it earlier about, you know, looking back to 1992, and I've seen other people say that we're in a similar situation to 2013, where it looked like the Tories were really low in the polls. I suppose it being coalition then, and of course Labour still lost in 2015. Are you thinking that the Conservatives are going to be done as a party in terms of next election? That's what we're being told at the moment, with all the polls are showing such a majority for Labour that you know, the Conservatives may not even be a party anymore, apparently.
I think the likelihood of it being a rout on such a scale that the Tories are no longer a party is not. I think that is really overblown. I think it has to be the case that the Tories have been in power for so long now that the power of time for a change will be too much to stop. And also the fact that, you know, talking to Tories, a lot of them are saying, oh, well, we need a time in opposition to sort of rebuild now. Like, a lot of them are pretty much, you know, resigned to it. But look, I think probably predictions are a mug's game, aren't they? When you look at the weirdness of British politics, it's like British politics has always been really weird, but I think it has been accelerating in weirdness since about 2010. You know, getting more and more weird, and the cycles of what's going on are getting shorter. Like we shed our way through prime ministers now at an incredible rate. So yeah, I think I'm so cautious to, I think, probably Labour will win the next election, but it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't, because we sort of live in the kind of worst version of the banter timeline.
Yeah, and as you say, you sort of said earlier as well, they are just doing nothing in the hope that the Conservatives will kind of completely destroy themselves. And they can. It's a bit, like winning a race because everyone else has keeled over. It does feel like they're not really working very hard to get into a winning position. It's just going to be all that we're left with.
Yeah, and I find it really the thing that I really hate about, particularly on Twitter, is if you say something that criticises Labour now, you get, oh, so do you want the Tories to stay in government? And my answer is always no, but I want a government that's different to the government we currently have. And if I'm not convinced that the Labour Party will do that, just continuing to just agree and nod and say, oh, well, they'll be better. They will probably do a bit more investment than the Tories, probably. But I remember being a teenager in the Blair years, and that was a government that hated young people. Absolutely despised young people, had serious very right-wing domestic policies when it came to law and order. People, again, have seemed to have forgotten the times where we were having news stories where they were suggesting that they might bring in, a situation where you could be marched to a cash point to pay fines. And that was the era of the mosquito device in shops being really keen, and people could talk about Sure Start, which obviously was an amazing and important thing. And it would be great if we looked after people and made sure that people had better support with their children, particularly in the early years. That was a great thing, obviously. But, the era of ASBOs, all of that kind of stuff, I can see it coming back, because you've got, in the Labour shadow cabinet, people saying, oh, well, what we need to do is we need to crack down on antisocial behaviour again and all this kind of thing, without making any connections to poverty, lack of opportunity, all of these kind of things. We're getting back. We will have a government who wants to do the same kind of authoritarian stuff that the Tories do, but promises to be more efficient with it. And of course, I'm going to say, I don't think that's a good thing.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I suppose it's also always worth thinking that because Keir Starmer was, what was his official job title there?
Director of Public Prosecutions.
Director of Public Prosecutions during the Tottenham riots. And there were kids prosecuted for nicking a pair of trainers, which is so pathetic.
Well, really, worse than that, though, for nicking bottled water.
Yeah.
Serious custodial sentences for that.
Wow, horrendous. Really horrendous. It's funny. It's sort of interesting. Going on a slight tangent here, but I don't know if you've sort of seen all the stuff from the US this week of like Joe Biden's going to get pardons for everyone that's had prior convictions for possessions of marijuana. And it suddenly feels like America's being almost more progressive than the Labour Party might be if they come in.
Yeah, there's absolutely no chance that Starmer would do that. Not a chance in hell.
Not at all.
And this is the problem for me. I think it does come back to. And particularly, on the day that we hear again that Paul Dacre is going to get his peerage, is that we still have a Labour Party who is terrified of the Daily Mail. We've got an opposition that's terrified of the Daily Mail, terrified of the Daily Telegraph, really wants to fulfil the desires of those papers. But, we don't have a Tory party that's terrified of the Guardian or the Daily Mirror, partly because those papers are pretty reactionary in their own way. But this is, we will never move leftwards as a country, or never move more socially democratic as a country, if we continue to have a political class that are so terrified of these right-wing papers. And those right-wing papers that then have a huge influence on the broadcast media, because fewer people are reading them. But, listen to the Today program of a morning, and what drives their agenda is very closely matched to what drives the editorial agenda of the Mail.
And is that the only reason that they should have to be scared of them? Because, like you said, not many people are reading them anymore. It really doesn't feel like the power is there with newspapers that used to be even 10 years ago. So is it simply in the way that they influence other journalism, and probably due to kind of the lack of money in other journalism that simply copy and paste stories from elsewhere?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, also, look, the Mail is increasingly growing fast online, and is massive online. So the Mail is still a very powerful force in that respect. And but I also think almost there's a weird kind of like almost psychological nostalgia amongst particularly Labour politicians, who they sort of want to do Blairism again. And part of doing Blairism was getting the media on side, at least for a while, and doing that by offering policies that that the media were keen on, particularly the right-wing media were keen on. And we know now from the Blair era that there were even occasions where policy announcements were planned out in a calendar so that the Sun was shouting for them all week, and then at the end of the week, the Labour Party, the Labour government revealed that policy was happening. So that's the thing for me. I almost think I do think it's a weird nostalgia thing almost, and a misunderstanding of how things could be. It's not. I think it's possible now. It would be possible now to get elected as a government if you didn't have the Sun and the Mail on your side. I think it's actually possible, but these people are just too afraid to try. And obviously the Corbyn era suggests to them, that it wouldn't work because of those reasons, of what happened to Jeremy Corbyn. But of course, Jeremy Corbyn is a very particular example of a politician, and a very particular sort of setup.
Yeah, well, there's so much to say looking back on that, how much Brexit was important in that election, which we're not going through now, and it won't be an issue. I mean, we're still going through it. We're going to be going through it forever. But in terms of the next election, it's not going to be a Brexit election.
No, I think the Tories might attempt to make it one again. I think they'll pretend that Keir Starmer will take us back into Europe or whatever. But Starmer's not going to do anything like that. Starmer's not going to do anything radical. Basically, no. I just don't believe that. And he's not terrifying because he's a creature of the establishment, because he's Sir Keir Starmer, former Director of Public Prosecutions.
Yeah.
In the Daily Telegraph the other day, in his sketch about the conference, obviously Tim Stanley, bow tie fan, builder fearer extraordinaire, was highly critical of Labour, but at the end of it he said, but the thing is, they seem nice now and I'm not afraid of them, and if they become the government I wouldn't be scared. So we got to that point, which I'm sure the Labour Party are delighted about, but I think Tim Stanley should be worried by a Labour government, frankly, if it was the kind of Labour government I wanted.
The praising of former Conservative MP Nick Bowles says he'd support Labour. And it's like, well, I don't want someone who advocated austerity and wanted to cut welfare now being happy with the idea of a Labour government. That doesn't fill me with confidence about them if his values are going to be seen in that. It's, you don't really want someone who former Conservatives are going to think, oh yeah, these guys will do.
Yeah, you're right. I think one of the things that I've really disliked again over the past 10, 12 years is this idea that Labour MPs and Tory MPs should be friends or get on with each other. And I think obviously you can expect a level of like just decorum, or like people not like spitting at each other in the halls or whatever. But a Labour MP should not find it easy to be, good friends with a Tory MP. That shouldn't be possible. No. Like, you're letting down your constituents if you have a solidarity with a political class over solidarity for your for your constituents. That's what you should be there to do. And there should be a demonstrable difference between a Labour MP and a Tory MP. And if there isn't, that's a problem. It's the same issue I have with the ease that there is of someone going to who's been working at the Daily Mail, for instance, to go and work at the New Statesman, or has been working at the Guardian to go and work at the Daily Mail, or vice versa. That shouldn't be so easy. There should be some steps in between. Otherwise, it's just a game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you don't actually believe anything.
Yeah, well, you've got no conviction. It doesn't. Your own beliefs don't matter at all. It's simply the paycheck, isn't it? Which is really bleak. It's really bleak. How much, because I think one of the things that you're so fantastic at doing on your conquest of the Substack is you're really good at, like you have done in this conversation, bringing up things from 12 years ago that I can barely remember. I was criticising the public's memory earlier, but I am also really bad with the news cycle as it is, remembering things. But how you're also very good at kind of following political donations and think tank support and looking at where the press is kind of favouring parties over what, and how much should we all be doing that more? And with the way things are, is it giving you a kind of clear idea of where things are heading?
I don't think other people should be doing it more because A, I've got a niche, I need to keep it, and B, it's psychologically very damaging. It's like being able to remember is a curse, really. But no, should we do more of it? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the thing that I talk about a lot, and I think is a huge issue, is the notion of media studies as a Mickey Mouse subject. That was really heavily pushed during the late Major era into the early Blair era. It was this idea that media studies was a pointless subject, and we didn't need to bother with that. And I do think people should look more at the news sources they're consuming and ask bigger questions about, well, why am I getting presented these particular people? I mean, you could just look at it from, watch 2 or 3 editions of Politics Live across a week, see how many of the panelists you would see as being from right-wing think tanks, or a right-wing position versus a left-wing position, and look at how often think tanks are described as left-wing when they're presented, versus how often right-wing think tanks are described as right-wing when they're introduced on a show. And there is a disparity. I think another thing today is that David Dimbleby's been saying a lot now he's left the BBC. And he was saying, the BBC's too scared to talk about real questions around royalty, like their tax affairs and their relationships to despotic regimes and stuff like that. And you think, well, good on him for saying it now. But, he's been in the BBC for his entire life. David Dimbleby, one of the earliest nepotism babies in the British media. And he's saying it now, but it's like, yeah, he's saying it now after all those years of having the paycheck. Those of us who've been saying it not with the benefit of being paid handsomely by the BBC get called conspiracy theorists a lot for saying stuff like that. So, yeah, more analysis. I don't know. I feel like I've gone on a very long journey away from your initial question there. But yes, yeah, people should pay more attention.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think it's interesting you said about David Dimbleby. I felt very similarly to when Emily Maitlis kind of did her big reveal of she's left the BBC, and actually they're so controlling and they don't let you say things. You go, well, you've been there, you could have done this before. You could have left before you got a really big podcast deal.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's in your interest to criticize the BBC in order to, promote global.
Yeah.
Which, and again, this one drives me crazy. And James O'Brien follows me on Twitter, is a subscriber to my newsletter, very appreciative of that. But the thing that I find very annoying there is he offers these views that are it's like a warm bath for the liberal mindset, right? Of like, oh, look at James O'Brien, he's taken this apart. But James O'Brien's lead-in man every morning is Nick Ferrari.
Yeah.
Who is, again, also another nepotism child. His father owned a news agency. That is how he got into British journalism, but there you go. And Nick Ferrari's a horrendous, distorting influence on politics, and just pouring out these right-wing talking points every morning. And somehow we're meant to think, well, oh, it's great because James O'Brien's on afterwards and that fixes it. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, it's mad. It's a bit of me that sort of sees it as, is it that James O'Brien thinks he can be the left-wing voice that breaks up the, like, LBC is horrendously right-wing pretty much the entire rest of the day. But then I think, why would you want to be associated with that station in the first place?
And the other thing to remember about James O'Brien, and again, like, God, he's not the worst person in the world, and like, he says a lot of things that are correct, but just before he came to LBC, he presented a short-lived ITV show called O'Brien on TV, which was a kind of Kilroy style, trollingly framed right-wing topics every show. With him in a suit and very clean shaven and looking very mean. And now he's, the kind of scruffy bearded left wing guy. And it's like, he started out at the Express. Now, of course, it doesn't mean I think everything he said, that he doesn't believe the things he says now. But this is just this, it's very easy to make these transitions in the British media and then expect nobody to bring up things you said in the past. Like, I used to be a contracted writer for the Daily Telegraph, right, and wrote for their comment pages, and I've talked extensively about why I regret doing that, why I think that was a bad thing, how you're forced to perform a certain role, as a sort of token centre leftish person, and I've gone progressively moved more left as I've gone on, and actually, quite good that a lot of younger people on the left have been very welcoming to me with that, because I've been willing to say, here's stuff I thought in the past or did or wrote in the past and why it was incorrect, but the expectation with other people is you're just meant to pretend they never did those things.
Yeah, it's not so much because I think there's this idea that we don't let people change, or we don't let people as on Twitter is a very good place for dredging up things that people tweeted 12 years ago or whatever. And at the same time, it's fine to let people change, but they have to, as you say, have to acknowledge what they did and at least say, that was me. It's not anymore. That's, and I'm sorry about it, but I have changed now. Whereas there's a lot of people that just seem to carry on as though it never happened.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, I think that we have to allow for change, and you will never bring people into your political tradition if you're not willing to let that change happen. But yeah, people are going to work for it, do the work.
Yeah, it's really important. Oh, well, thanks tons for being on the show this week. And actually, do you know what? One more question before I ask you, last one. How do you mentioned earlier that it does sort of completely crumble your sanity doing your Substack, and I find it just tweeting about politics and doing this podcast that there are moments where I go, I need to not watch the news for like 2 weeks, otherwise I think I'm going to just lose it. How do you keep yourself going through this kind of intense, just sort of scanning of the news every day that you do?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I do, to be honest. I'm like, as I'm talking to you, I'm looking down at like piles of newspapers around me, and I think probably that it's sort of like being surrounded by grimoires or something in like some fantasy thing. These like books full of dark energy. Yeah, I don't know really. It's a sort of Sisyphean curse I put on myself. I guess one of the things that's really good is that the newsletter gets some quite good feedback. I do a daily Twitch show called The Paper Thing, 1 p.m. on most lunchtimes in the week, and there's a like a small but very committed audience for that show, and it's just nice. That's fun. There's jokes. And just making jokes and like having that community on Twitter and having that community around the newsletter and stuff, that helps, because it's like, well, you feel like you're not alone, and there's good feedback from it. And to be honest, the newsletter is the most well-received thing I've ever done in my career. It might not be the most lucrative or go the furthest, but the people who read it really like it, and I get something from that. So I guess that's it really.
Yeah, definitely helps. It's a fantastic newsletter. I really enjoy reading it. And the question that I ask all the guests on this is, apart from your newsletter, apart from your Twitch, apart from your Twitter, are there other sort of writers, journalists, websites that you'd recommend people follow for what you consider to be actually useful and independent political insight? Who do you go to?
Let's see. Well, I like Adam Bienkhoff. He takes a much more sort of he's more sort of straight look at things than I do, but he writes a lot of good stuff. He has a newsletter called Folded, which is good. He also writes for Byline Times, which I used to write for a bit. Who else do I like? I like not in politics, but I like if you want something that will be sort of help you not have to think about politics, the New Q, which is the newsletter that is run by the guys who were on the last editorial team of Q magazine, which I worked for in the past. Their newsletter is good. And yeah, tons of people. A lot of streamers I enjoy. Like there's a guy called Sinan Cozy who I like on the left. He's good. There's a ton of good people. But yeah, look at their stuff and read fewer newspapers. that's my there you go. That's my recommendation.
Thanks tons to Mick for that great chat and putting up with my cold, addled brain asking questions. Do follow him on Twitter at Broken Bottle Boy and sign up to his Substack, Conquest of the Useless, as it's an excellent read every single week. Obviously, if you can do a paid subscription, that actually helps him live and keep doing it as well. I've popped a link in the pod blurb, so check that out and check out his regular Twitch streams too. Also, thanks to Marie, who tagged us both into a tweet recently, which reminded me that I've been meaning to ask Mick to do this for years and years and years. So really appreciate that too. What other people shall I ask questions at? Well, hopefully not 90% Lemsip Max. What other subjects shall I try to recall as I simultaneously work as a snot factory? Let me know, and you can do that by dropping me a line at partlypoliticalbroadcast@gmail.com. And that's it for this week's Partly Political Broadcast podcast. If this podcast keeps you from simply walking to the sea and swimming till you hit any land other than here, then sorry, I should probably stop making them for your sake and do mind the poo on your way to a better life. If, however, you actually like this show, then please recommend it to other people who aren't the worst, give it a review on Apple Podcasts or similar pod homes, and if you can, please donate to the Ko-fi or Patreon too. Thanks lots and lots to Acast, my brother Last Skeptic and Cat Day, and this will be back next week when Liz Truss announces her allies in the Growth Coalition are some herbicides and giving children cigarettes from the age of 3. Bye! This week's show was sponsored by Anti-Growth from Tories, the new remedy for anyone wishing to instantly lose their erections. Sick of being aroused? Tired of pitching trouser tents? Anti-Growth from the Tories works immediately by bringing up a random photo of any of their 249 MPs and you'll never ever feel lust again. An instant extinguisher of any fires of passion. Anti-Growth by Tories, reducing population any way they can.